Welcome to this video podcast from our Do Yourself Justice series, where we tell you your legal rights in everyday situations. It's brought to you by award-winning legal firm Slee Blackwell Solicitors. Hello, and welcome to Do Yourself Justice, a legal podcast for non-legal people like me. We're asking, what do you have to do, and how do you not do the things that you shouldn't do? I am a legal nobody. My name is Danny, but I know nothing about the law. Fortunately, I have a good old friend who does. James McNally, who is a solicitor and partner at Slee Blackwell Solicitors with, 25 years experience, something like that?
Good afternoon, Danny. Yeah, it is. We were discussing this today, and there was a sad realization that I'd been at this firm for more than half my life. And I was trying to work out the maths, and I didn't get a different answer. So, yeah, more than half my life I have been working in the law.
Today we're going to focus on what the public might have to think about when you come up against the police. I have never been in trouble with the law, never had cause to speak to the police, really, but I certainly wouldn't know what to do if the police suddenly spoke to me. How often do you speak to the police as a solicitor?
Really quite infrequently. The type of law that I'm involved in is civil, and civil is very different from criminal. I might get in touch with the police if I want copies of an accident report or witness statements, stuff like that. But day to day, my involvement with the police is relatively small. I guess in criminal on a day-to-day basis, that's where you're advising people when they've been accused or arrested or convicted of a crime, and you'd be dealing with the police on a daily basis.
So, as an ordinary person, if I have an experience with the police which I'm for some reason unhappy about, where you might come in is if I want your help in making a complaint against them or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we normally speak to people from a civil point of view long after they've been dealt with by the police. So it's if they unfortunately have been assaulted by the police or if they've been wrongly detained by the police, that's when they might come and have a chat with us and see if it's something that, we can take further. We would act for people and possibly get compensation for them. So that would be as a civil solicitor, that would be my usual day-to-day involvement with the police.
Well, we're not really going to talk about things that have gone that far in today's conversation. What we want to focus on is the immediate experience before the solicitor even comes in. And I know that you've got a lot of advice for what people's rights are when they are arrested or when they are stopped and searched, when they're taken to the police station, when their house is searched, and so on. There's one term which I'd like to check. I know we're going to try to avoid legal jargon, but you are going to mention PACE several times. What is PACE?
PACE is the set of rules and the benchmarks that every police officer should follow. The rules that should bind the police. It stands for the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. It came in 1984, and it's one of the most important laws in England and Wales because it's all about police powers and, importantly, your rights. So before PACE, it wasn't exactly a Wild West and a free-for-all, but then, if you think 1984, we'd had miners' strike, we'd had the riots in Brixton, there'd been a lot of civil unrest, and the police had come out of that not always, with the best reputation. And so PACE was brought in order to offer some kind of control. And it covers things like stop and search, when and how police should search people in public, arrest and detention, so that's your rights if you're arrested or held at a station. Interviews, so these are the rules as to how you must be treated during questioning, searches of your home and property, so what permissions the police need, and codes of practice, so detailed rules that the police must follow in different situations. And PACE, it controls the police, but it also bestows rights on the individual and you as a member of public as well. So if you're arrested, then PACE gives you the right to free legal advice. It gives you the right to be treated with dignity. So yeah, it's a really, really important kind of aspect of our day-to-day life, which is one of those things that hopefully no one ever really needs to know about. But knowing it's there should give you a peaceful night's sleep.
Yes, well, we can imagine that if you're suddenly approached by the police out of the blue, it's quite an intimidating and scary experience. So knowing what you are allowed to do and what you're entitled not to do will be useful, I'm sure. I should say, by the way, that I live near a fire station and ambulance park. So if we hear police-like sirens in the background, nobody's coming to get us. It's just I live near their main road into the centre of town.
You've said too much. You've given too much information away. Give people too much about their rights. We need to shut you down as a citizen journalist.
Well, now let's perhaps start with the words of a listener who's got in touch with us, because it will give us the opportunity to talk about many of those things that you've already mentioned. This listener says, I was recently stopped by the police while walking home from work. They said they suspected I had something illegal on me and searched my bag, but they didn't find anything. I asked if I had to go with them, and they said yes. Then they took me to the station and kept me there for hours before letting me go without any charges. I'm still not sure why they thought I'd done something wrong and felt really shaken by the whole thing. Was this legal? And is there anything I can do about it now? So let's go right back to the beginning of that experience when this person was stopped. When can the police stop and search you?
Okay, so you're walking down the street on your merry way, and the police officer comes up to you and says, "Excuse me, can I have a moment of your time?" The police can stop and search you only when they have a valid reason. So in law, they need what's called reasonable grounds. They need basically a genuine, objective reason based on facts. So, for example, if they suspect that you're carrying something illegal or prohibited, okay? So if they think you've got a weapon or drugs or something similar to that, okay? They can't stop you arbitrarily just because of who you are. So, your age, your race, your gender, that is contrary to PACE. Okay, so that PACE is there to protect you. So they need to have a reasonable and valid reason to stop you. An officer must suspect you have one of the following on you in order to justify a search: illegal drugs, a weapon, stolen property, or tools or items for a crime.
You said reasonable grounds, which is one of those unhelpful legal grey areas, or at least it sounds like to me. Isn't this just open to interpretation? What I think are reasonable grounds and what the police think are reasonable grounds are completely different.
I'm afraid what you've done there, Danny, is you've spotted the skill in drafting legislation and statute that we lawyers are so good at doing. Okay, you need grey areas, you need vagary. Everything needs to be vague, and that's because lawyers and and the people drafting this legislation, they don't want it to be too restrictive. They want to have a bit of wriggle room. So what is reasonable? Well, exactly. These are the arguments, and these are the things that, as you say, are so open to interpretation. It is deliberately vague to give the police scope, and if you make a complaint about the police, it's deliberately vague in order to give them some kind of wriggle room.
Right.
And also, there are exceptions to that rule. Police can stop and search you without individual suspicion if they have approval from a senior officer. So big events, when there was all the issues, I think it was around the coronation, where we suddenly had people being arrested because and stopped and searched and arrested, and that was because special measures had been brought in. So that was an example of a time when it was that people didn't think they were going equipped, but yeah, they had concerns.
Because there were extra security measures in force for public safety,
Yeah, yeah,
and so they can legitimately ask anybody who is in a given area.
yeah. But as you see, as we go through this series and as we go through the different type of laws and legislations, grey areas and vagueness is the benchmark of our legal system.
And just one more thing, if I think that the reasonable grounds that the police have said that they have for stopping and searching me, if I don't agree with them, can I get my phone out and film them?
You can. You're perfectly entitled to do so. And just to go back to something you said there, the grounds that the police gave you for stopping you, that's really, really important. Again, under PACE, the police must explain why they have stopped you and searched you. Okay. The information they give you is quite specific. They must say who they are, so their name and police station. They must say what they're searching you and what they expect to find, why they're conducting the search, so the reason or suspicion, and what law allows them to search you. And they should also, importantly, inform you that you have a right to get a record of the search afterwards. So that is either a written record that you should get from them at the time, or you can go to the station, or even body cam footage, because more and more officers have body cam footage. But if you have concerns, if you want your own record, there is nothing wrong with you getting out your phone and saying to the police officer, look, I'm going to record this. They can't take the phone off you. They can't make you delete the footage. That is your record of this stop and search.
Okay, so let's go back to that scenario that we've presented. And in that case, the person said, I asked if I had to go to the police station with them, and they said yes. Is that true? Could that person have said, no, I'm not coming?
They could have. The important thing is whether or not you have been placed under arrest. Okay. If the police won't say whether or not you are under arrest, you are free to go. You haven't been told you're being detained legally. You can just walk away. The whole, I think, out of all this advice that we're giving, the most important thing when you're talking to them about filming, when you're asking them, their name and their badge number, etc., the most important thing to remember in all of this, and it's difficult to remember all of this because these situations are really stressful. You and I have never really been in those situations, but I've been driving down the road and a police car will appear behind you, and all of a sudden you get very anxious because of the power that police officer has, and because of the consequences that might be there for you in the situations you might find yourself in. But the most important aspect of all of this is to remain calm and polite. And again, that can be really difficult. Stop and search is so contentious. And when people feel they're being targeted, and when you have police officers who act contrary to PACE and stop people based upon their race and their ethnicity, and if this is you're a young black kid on a council estate, and this is the 10th time that week that you've been stopped, it is very difficult for you to control your emotions and to not get aggressive or give less than polite answers. But if you can remain calm, then that's the best thing. It's, when we're lawyers and we're writing letters, what we're always thinking is this letter might end up before a judge. If this dispute doesn't get resolved, this is, if we don't manage to settle things, then it's going to go before a judge, and the judge is going to be asked for his opinion. If you have got correspondence with the other side, which is rude, which is short, which is just snarky, the judge is immediately gonna form an opinion. And it's exactly the same in this situation here. If you've got body cam footage and it's someone being rude and aggressive to the police, then it shouldn't, but unfortunately it does influence, in my view, the opinion of the judge. And we've had numerous occasions where we've had the police as defendants, and it's quite clear that the judge is sympathetic towards the police, because they take a view that this is a stressful job. It's a stressful situation. These people are doing a job which is a vocation. All of that is correct. All of that is understandable. But the fewer excuses you give a judge or someone to be able to reach that conclusion by being polite, by being nothing but nice on the body cam footage, the better it is, should the situation go pear-shaped later on.
I think my way of dealing with stressful situations when I don't want to be angry because I know that's unhelpful is just to stay quiet and think carefully before I say anything. And presumably this is not a problem in that scenario. So as you've said, if they haven't told you you're under arrest, it's perfectly okay to calmly say, am I under arrest or am I free to go?
Yeah, and that's a perfectly decent and reasonable question to ask them, isn't it? And if they refuse to answer, or if they avoid the question, then you can just say something like, "Since you haven't told me I'm under arrest or being detained, I'm going to leave now." And then you walk away. You don't run, you don't be aggressive, you don't obstruct the officer, you don't give them any excuses for escalating the situation themselves. You just walk away.
Well, let's move to a slightly different scenario, that of the police entering your home. And my only experience of this is watching the series Adolescence recently, where they just burst into the guy's home first thing in the morning, totally out of the blue for him and for his whole family. So when can the police search your home?
Okay, your home is protected by law. Englishman's home is his castle and all that. So, and in most cases, they've got to have either your consent, so you can allow them in, or they must have obtained a search warrant from a magistrate to lawfully enter and search your property. And a search warrant is a legal document that gives them permission to enter, and if necessary, they can use reasonable force, like breaking down a door lock. And there are only a very few exceptions when police can enter without a warrant. And even if you aren't home, but they're limited to urgent situations. So if they're in hot pursuit of a suspect who runs into a house, they can follow the suspect into the house. If they think they need to stop a disturbance or breach of a peace, they can enter the house. And if they hear someone calling for help or someone who's in distress, then they can enter the house. But on just turning up, if you don't want to let them in, and if they haven't got a search warrant, then they need to go away and get a search warrant.
And if they have broken down the door, as we've seen in those dramas, who's liable for the damage? Can you then ask them to pay for the things they've damaged?
If they have a warrant, then it's your problem, which is crazy. But if they've got a reason and then they've come into your house, with all the correct paperwork, then you are responsible for repairs to things like broken locks or doors. So they've got the right address, they've got the right legal authority, then you're going to have to pay for it. If they made a mistake, and they do more often than you might think, then the police can arrange and pay for repairs.
Now let's return to our scenario. We weren't told how long that person was there exactly. They said, I was there for hours and then they let me go without any charge. How long can the police keep you, whether they've arrested you or whether you've gone voluntarily? If they're not charging you, how long do you have to stay there?
So once again, we look at pace, and pace tells us quite clearly they've got 24 hours. So we've all watched 24 Hours in Police Custody. That is when the clock starts ticking from the moment that they arrest you. You've got 24 hours. If they haven't arrested you and you're there giving an interview, then they can't detain you. You can get up, you can leave at any point because you're there completely voluntarily.
And during those first 24 hours, what rights do I have to say I refuse to say anything without a solicitor, or I need to have a break, I need the toilet, something to eat, I just need to sleep, or what are my rights in that situation?
Again, this is where PACE comes into play, and like I said, the important aspect of PACE is the rights that it gives you as an individual as well. So the police have got to treat you humanely. So you should be given rest, you should be given food, you should be given access to medical attention if needed. And yes, you have right to a solicitor if you need one. And what there is there's normally someone called a duty solicitor who is available at the end of the phone. So you don't need to know who to call or access to Google or anything like that. There'll be a duty solicitor who'll be on the roster, and they'll come down and they'll be there for your initial interviews. Then you can go and instruct whoever you want later on.
As we said earlier, when solicitors come in, we're getting further down the line into you've probably been there longer than 24 hours. Maybe you have been arrested, maybe you've been detained, and you don't think you should have been. What actually is a wrongful arrest?
If you're arrested by mistake, so the police grab the wrong person, okay, that there's a mistaken identity or whatever. Okay, so please grab the wrong person. There's steps you take. If it truly was a mistake, then as soon as the police realised the mistake, they should let you go. Okay, if they don't let you go, then you're being wrongfully detained, and potentially you'd have cause for a complaint and even a claim against the police. As I said before, you have a right to be informed of why you've been arrested. So again, if at any point it becomes apparent that errors have been made, or if they haven't told you, why you have been arrested, then again, that potentially that's where you're being wrongfully arrested.
So if I'm unhappy with the experience and I want to take it further, you mentioned earlier this is your contact with the police. You are involved in civil claims against them. So I obviously, if I happen to have a friend who's a solicitor, I would speak to informally and ask for help, but not everybody can do that. Most people probably can't do that. So what's the first thing I do?
There's various steps that you can take, and just because you've had a less than pleasant experience with the police, it doesn't immediately mean that you can sue them and get compensation. Okay. What you can do, first of all, is you can make a complaint directly to the police force involved. And each police force should have a department that handles complaints, the professional standards department. You can write to them, email them, go on a website, and you can make a complaint saying what happened and what went wrong. And they're required to deal with your complaint in a reasonable time and inform you of the result. Now, a lot of people wouldn't want to complain directly to the police force involved. They might not think that they're going to get a fair hearing. So there is also the Independent Office for Police Conduct, and that's an independent body that oversees all police complaints in England and Wales. And you can go to the IOPC directly, especially if you feel uncomfortable, as I said, complaining to police force, or if the matter is very serious. And again, you just fill in a form online, and they can decide if they want to investigate independently. They've got their own investigators to look into the incident, and rather than the police investigating themselves, the IOPC there will ensure accountability, and they'll make sure that complaints aren't swept under the rug.
I think my main takeaway from all of this is probably the thing that's hardest to remember, which is just remain calm throughout the whole thing, whether it's the initial arrest or whether it's making the complaint later. It seems to me if you are ever angry or you act in an aggressive manner, then that could potentially be used against you as evidence of the fact that you haven't behaved properly.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's just given the police, or it's giving others grounds um, to argue that their behaviour was reasonable, and even if they haven't correctly followed pace, given the emotions and the emotional, and the circumstances they were in, that it's that their behaviour is justified.
Well, that was my main takeaway as the non-legal person. You, as the legal expert with more than half a life's experience, what's your main takeaway for everyone?
That you've got to hope that you never get into the situation, and again, one of the things that lawyers always talk about is the counsel of perfection. It's so easy for us to sit here and for us to say, remain calm, don't do this, don't do that, don't answer back. But it's impossible to do that. So I think the important thing to know is that if you don't feel you've been treated properly by the police, if you think that they've overstepped the mark, is not just to accept it, to make a complaint to the police force, to make a complaint to the IOPC, to go and see solicitors who might be able to help you. So yeah, the initial situation may have got out of hand, but it's the steps you take afterwards which are the important thing. And I think the police, I think off the top of my head, I think there's like 150,000 police officers in the country, which is a massive number. So if you think of them as a factory where you've got 150,000 people working within the factory, there's obviously going to be some bad apples there, and there's going to be some people who work within that factory who cause disruption, who have abhorrent views on race or sexuality or whatever, and who are there for the wrong reasons. As we said before, being a police officer is a vocational thing, but you've got some police officers who unfortunately are there because it gives them an ability to abuse the power that's been given to them. And if you don't make complaints, if you don't, question, the steps that have been taken, then that's where those people will continue to get away with it. And so you need to kind of shine a light on their misdemeanors and bring it to the attention of others, and to stop it from happening again.
Well, thank you very much, James, for all your free legal advice today. If anyone wants to like or subscribe or leave a comment and give us something to talk about on a future episode of Do Yourself Justice, we'll be delighted to hear from you. If people have specific questions about contact with the police related to what we've talked about today, where would you suggest they go to look for answers?
If they want to visit our website, we've got our Slee Blackwell website, but we do have a specific website, policecompensation.co.uk. Go on there. There'll be a contact details. You can email us any of your queries, and we can have a chat and just see if there is something that we can help with.
All right. James McNally from Slee Blackwell Solicitors, and me, Danny Lawrence, nobody in particular. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time on Do Yourself Justice.
Slee Blackwell Solicitors, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and looking after you.